That's okay. Good morning, everyone. Today is the 6th of August, 2026, and this is an agenda meeting of the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. I'm Katie Sieben, the chair of the commission. I'll take the role of the other commissioners who are present for today's hearing. Commissioner Partridge.
Here.
Commissioner Hom.
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Here.
Commissioner Tuma.
Last and but least, here.
A quorum is present. We have 3 items on our agenda today. Mr. Stolpis, good morning. Could you please introduce agenda item number 1?
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item number 1 is docket numbers E002/RP-24-67 in the matter of Xcel Energy's 2024 to 2040 Integrated Resource Plan, and E002/CN-23-212 in the matter of Xcel's competitive resource acquisition process for up to 800 megawatts of firm generation. And the specific issue pertains to the department request to require Xcel to develop a customer-owned thermal battery tariff. The issues before the Commission today: should the Commission require Xcel Energy to work with interested parties to develop a tariff to support customer-owned thermal batteries and file a tariff proposal within 90 days? If the Commission requires a new tariff, should the tariff be filed in a new docket? If the Commission requires a new tariff, what information should the initial filing include? Members from Xcel, the department, clean energy organizations, and I believe Minnesota Large Industrial Group are present in the room. Renewable Thermal Collaborative, I believe all their representatives are online. And Thermal Battery Alliance, I'm not sure if they're in person or online, but maybe they can chime in if they're on the WebEx or in person.
Thank you, Mr. Stolpis. Commissioners, in reviewing the full record we have on this, I'm supportive of decision option 5, which would deny the department's request. And it's not because personally I don't think that there still could be work on development of a project similar to the Rondo project that came forward and was earlier approved by the commission through the firm dispatchable docket. But obviously that project fell apart for reasons outside of our control, and I think it's incumbent on the department to work with stakeholders and others to continue to develop a tariff, perhaps across utilities as the large industrials requested. So I would move or ask commissioners if there's any discussion or questions of my motion to move decision option number 5.
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions. The only thing I would add to it, I was convinced that Xcel's argument that there is already existing tariffs they could work through to develop a particular project that would be like this. They have none online that are demanding to be on, but there are ways to work with, like some sort of steam off-taker. They're already providing steam off-take stuff already, so this is nothing new to them, and there are plenty of other avenues to go through. And if there's glitches at that stage with a project, I think Xcel knows how to find their way here to make a petition to request for a change, and so I'm pretty comfortable with your decision because of that too.
Commissioner Sullivan.
I don't want to be persnickety or anything, but Commissioner Tuma, I just want to make sure, like you said, there's additional tariffs. I think Xcel's point was there were additional programs that they could work with, not tariffs. I just want to clarify that.
But I'm assuming those programs are working through their already existing tariff structure, so they could work with a particular individual if they wanted to come here and find a way to get them hooked up and make it happen. So I'm just thinking that the structure that we have right now is working. So probably using the word tariff was probably wrong. I think just the structure.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify. That's it. We don't need to belabor it, but that's right. All I wanted to clarify that.
Thanks.
Chair Sieben.
Commissioner Partridge.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. So I agree with you and support your preferred decision option. I think I just wanted to reiterate that I too think that this technology offers a lot of promise, and it's very exciting, and we do hope to see projects in Minnesota. I think from my perspective, one of the things that gave me pause about moving forward with a tariff now is that we don't have experience with it. And in talking with staff, I was concerned that if we move forward with a tariff prematurely, we could actually cause harm and create new barriers for these types of projects that we do think have promise. So I support your decision option.
On my motion, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Commissioner Partridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Hom,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuma,
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yes.
I also vote yes. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Stolpis and parties. Agenda item number 2, we will move to in a second. And parties that, we are going to have opening comments, so parties that are addressing the commission can please come forward or turn your camera on. Mr. Janicic, good morning. Please introduce agenda item number 2.
Good morning, Chair Sieben and Commissioners. Dockets 2588 and 2589 concern the joint application of Summit Lake Solar and Summit Lake Storage for a solar energy generating system site permit and a battery energy storage site permit in Nobles County, Minnesota. The questions before the Commission are: should the Commission adopt the administrative law judge's finding of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendations? Should the Commission find that the environmental assessment and the record created at the public hearings address the issues identified in the scoping decision? Should the Commission grant site permits for the proposed battery storage and solar systems? If granted, what additional conditions or requirements should be included in the site permits? Yesterday, several comments were submitted into the docket that I'd sent you. If you need paper copies of those, I have them. Staff has no additional comments at this time.
Mr. Janicic, thank you for pointing out that there were late filed there were comments that the commission received late. There has been an error with our public comment process, and not all of the comments that were filed into the public record have been dispersed across the appropriate dockets. We're working to fix that problem that has occurred, and but for this particular docket, we did get the public comments that were submitted prior to today, and the commissioners have reviewed them, as Mr. Janicic has said, and those comments, I should also make clear, have been e-filed. So with that, we'll begin this morning with comments, as we said, with parties. And I don't know where my list of parties is, but I'll find it. We'll begin with the applicant. Mr. Deere, please state your name and the organization you're representing.
Good morning, Chair Sieben, Commissioners. Jeremy Deere with Frederickson and Byron on behalf of Summit Lake Solar and Summit Lake Storage. Applicants are pleased to be here today as you consider the approval of 2 very important projects for Nobles County and the state of Minnesota. The record before you demonstrates these projects have been properly cited and evaluated, and applicants request you issue 2 site permits today so they can continue to move toward a power purchase agreement and an execution of a contract with a union contractor that will hire qualified craft union workers to construct the projects. Applicants wish to be a good neighbor to the community and build a project that will not only bring additional energy and production tax revenues to the local communities, it will also provide important grid services in a part of a state that has experienced curtailment issues. This project has received significant public involvement, and the applicants have and will continue to listen to those who will be impacted by the project. A good example of this is documented in this record. During the environmental scoping period, the public provided extensive comments. Applicants listened to what the community was saying and paused this permitting process so that it could redesign the project to reduce impacts on neighboring landowners, public drain tile, and the community of Reading. The revised project reduced the footprint of the project, doubled setbacks from non-participating residences, added vegetative screening to reduce visual impacts and address snow drifting concerns, and moved the BES further away from the village of Reading. After the project was redesigned, EIP staff conducted a thorough and adequate environmental review consistent with applicable laws and past commission precedent. The project is protective of the environment and future agricultural uses. The vegetation management plan and the agricultural impact mitigation plan required by these site permits were prepared in coordination with the applicable state agencies to ensure they will be protective of the environment and allow the soils to rest and improve over the life of the project so that upon decommissioning and restorations, the soils can again be utilized for agricultural purposes. The applicants are committed to hiring qualified craft union workers from a suite of trades to build a quality, safe, and reliable project. This will bring good jobs and economic benefits to the local communities. As mentioned in the record, the projects are shortlisted for power purchase agreements, and that process is ongoing. Applicants have a signed GIA for solar, and a surplus service application is in process. That application was submitted in January 2025. The major studies are complete and they look good, anticipating a GIA by the end of 2026. Applicants anticipating commencing construction in the spring of 2027 and bringing the projects online by the end of 2028. And we do have preferred decision options if and when you are ready to hear from us. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to that how about at the conclusion of or when we move into questions. Next is LIUNA, please. Mr. Pranis, good morning. Please state your name for the record and the organizations you're representing.
Thank you, Chair Sieben, Commissioners. Kevin Pranis on behalf of LIUNA, Minnesota and North Dakota and International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 426. With me here today is Joel Johnson representing IBEW, but we commented jointly, so I'll be delivering the initial comments. I think the most important thing to observe is that we raised almost similar, nearly identical concerns with the Lake Charlotte solar case, which the Commission has already looked at. As the Commission may recall, in that case, our recommendation was a permit condition requiring the company to build the project the way that they told everyone they were going to build the project, not the way that we have since discovered they intend to build it, or to order a contested case. The Commission instead chose a different option that was not our preferred option, but we thought represented a reasonable compromise that was protective of the public interest in maximizing the local job benefits that Chair Sieben had offered. And so it would certainly be appropriate in this case, rather than reinventing the wheel, to use that same language. We noted in our comments that that is not, however, the language that the applicant purported was the Lake Charlotte language. They left out the most important part that helps ensure that we actually have a beneficial project that looks like the other projects that the company has built and has comparable benefits to those that they have advertised. And so I think that seems like a reasonable solution to us. I would just say in this case in particular, it's even more important than in Lake Charlotte because of the strong level of local opposition that we certainly found when we attended the public hearing, where I believe we were practically the only voice supportive of doing solar in that area. So I think delivering to folks, maximizing those benefits and delivering the project in the way that was promised. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pranis. Next is the Carpenters, Mr. Rains. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Marcus Rains, business representative with the Northern Midwest Regional Council of Carpenters. The Carpenters support granting site permits for both the proposed 200 megawatt BESS and 200 megawatt Summit Lake solar facility. The project aligns with Minnesota's clean energy goals, strengthens grid reliability, and delivers local economic benefits and large-scale renewable development that should be permitted with proper environmental safeguards. Our support stems from 200 megawatts of solar, will help advance Minnesota's carbon-free initiatives and make us less reliant on fossil fuel. The siting is near existing electrical and transmission infrastructure. Summit has engaged landowners and remains sensitive to desires surrounding non-operational leased land. In addition to hundreds of construction jobs, this project will provide key local employment and significant tax revenue for the local community. The Commission has already approved similar BEST projects like Lake Charlotte, demonstrating that battery energy storage can be done safely with regulated conditions. Geronimo has a long history of performing safe work on union job sites. The proposal is similar to others that are being used successfully to perform utility-scale solar and storage projects, including their project in South Dakota and an upcoming one in North Dakota. Based upon a review of the decision options before the Commission, we support the staff's recommendation for the use of a local workforce decision in option P5, similar to what was included in Lake Charlotte. We would defer to the applicant's position on most of the other decision options. However, we stand adamantly opposed to decision options 98A, new finding 98B, and new finding 159A. As the Commission is aware, related legal issues surrounding these findings are before the Minnesota Court of Appeals. We respectfully urge you not to adopt these decision options pending resolution of the appellate proceedings. Unfortunately, the parties are asking the Commission to hand them through permit conditions, an outcome that reverses previous decisions made by District Court. Allowing parties to relitigate labor jurisdiction disputes through the site permitting process whenever a court decision comes down they are unhappy with would be a troubling precedent. That ruling on Elk Creek assisted in providing a clear definition of jurisdiction. More importantly, it cleared the way for large-scale solar and storage projects in Minnesota to proceed without labor schemes designed to cut certain trades from a project. Summit Lake will be performed using the National Maintenance Agreement, which is a project labor agreement. We support the use of the National Maintenance Agreement for construction of this project. We are troubled the other parties are opposing this framework as outlined in the June 29th exception to the ALJ report. A project labor agreement of this kind sets uniform wages, safety, apprenticeship, and dispute resolution standards across every craft on the job site and awards skilled trades a fair and guaranteed role in the construction without putting commissioners in the middle of a labor dispute. It will keep the project the size and scale of Summit Lake on schedule and on budget, benefiting members, the contractors, and ultimately the ratepayers. Through these proposed decision options, parties are asking the Commission to oppose the use of a PLA on this job site through disguised siting conditions. Why? They are primary parties to an agreement that is not a project labor agreement and only uses certain trades to complete these projects. It has become common practice to solicit developers to use these means of performing work to cut out other trades for their own benefit. We urge your skepticism over the fact that these two parties are partnering on using a particular electrical code when one of them does not represent members that even perform electrical work. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We ask that the Summit Lake Joint Permit be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Raines. The final commenter is County Commissioner Gene Metz from Nobles County. Commissioner, thanks so much for joining us. Can one of you please make room for him? Thank you, Mr. Deere. And, sir, there's a little microphone on the or a little button on the bottom of your microphone.
There we go.
Great.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioner Sieben, Commissioner Sullivan, Commissioner Partridge, Commissioner Ham, and Commissioner Tuma. Good morning. I am Gene Metz, a Nobles County resident. I'm an active farmer in a sixth-generation farm and also Nobles County Commissioner, and I appreciate the invitation to speak today. Like you, I wear many hats, balancing what's good for our county and what's fair for our citizens. My 14 years as a commissioner, I've been heavily involved in renewable energy on the Rural Minnesota Energy Board. I've had the pleasure to work with several of you commissioners on many projects such as transmission, permitting, and the future of renewables. Large-scale solar production and battery energy storage is a new concept for Nobles County. we've dealt mostly with wind over the last 25 years, and I believe are the second largest wind producer in the state. My job as commissioner is to look at all aspects of a project, develop the potential good, and look at the bad possibilities that make a rational decision as I move forward. You know a lot of this stuff already, but I'm just going to repeat it. The first mandates for a percentage of NSP and now Xcel's energy portfolio began roughly in the mid-90s, which we were a part of. And today, the 100% carbon-free mandate by 2040 basically is getting us to where we're talking about this more today. So how do we meet these mandates and have enough uninterruptible power for the near future and further beyond? It's estimated even without any potential data center use, electrical demand will grow by 4% per year. Coal is slowly being shut down, but the future is limited. And it's being replaced by gas production, which is not carbon-free. Hydro has a limited resource. Additional nuclear, if allowed in Minnesota, will be at least 15 years out if we act now. So that leaves wind and solar to kind of fill the void. So how does Nobles County and its citizens benefit from presently large-scale solar and battery storage? Usually number one in the county is the production tax portfolio. We have to balance that when we're talking solar. Basically, agricultural land is taken out of production. And in my farming operation, my direct cost from raising corn and soybeans is about $625 an acre. And that's money that's normally spent on Main Street and multiplied many times over. So that's kind of the balance economically that commissioners look at. Those 1,800 acres are presently growing crops and will now present a drastically changing landscape. The land would now be permanent panels, which is not the greatest view in my opinion. The batteries from a BESS system do emit noise, and the decibel range from what I've researched is slightly higher than what MPCA would permit. So these are a few of the things that as county commissioner I have to consider when I'm allowed to make the decision. However, state statute puts that in your hands, I think, for a good reason. A county simply doesn't have the ability to research all this and go through the whole process. The recent discussion in our area on data centers, new solar, wind farms, high voltage transmission lines have strongly provoked our residents. With an ever increasing demand for power and a loss of some of our base load, we need to find those additional new resources. Solar and wind are proven and available, and according to the Lazard study, are the cheapest unsubsidized systems to develop at this time. So as stated, my 14 years experience in renewable energy, kind of starting on the ground floor and working to where we are today, it's kind of hard to convey what I've learned to my constituents and tell them this is a good thing in the future, because social media has a way of telling them different, and so it's very hard the last couple of years as a commissioner and being this close to the industry to convey that message. So if this decision was made in our county boardroom, in which I'm in favor, some of the things that we talked about with Geronimo early on, they talked about increasing the setbacks, and that was some information that we had with local citizens and suggested that to Geronimo, so I applaud them for doing what they've done. You talk to all the citizens, they say 10 miles would probably be my setback distance, but you have to kind of weigh that out and try to figure out what's the best for everybody. The best system setbacks I can't remember where they're at, but again, if there's a noise potential, there has to be a way to look at that and to mitigate it if it happens. And I'm a strong advocate of looking at agrovoltaics to kind of somehow bring the use of solar areas back to some type of ag production, whether it's livestock grazing, truck gardening, or traditional farming practices. There is some research out there. University of Minnesota Morris is doing that, and I'm not saying that Geronimo should be held by this right now, but something to possibly look in the future as your board moves forward with these. So this is in my eyes, kind of a short-term issue, but we've got about, in my estimation, 20 to 25 years to get the long-term base load for power production figured out, because if coal goes away, in my opinion, we're going to have to look at nuclear, and are getting to be a growing demand in rural areas to really look at that. So I thank you for your time today, and sorry if I rambled on.
No, it was really helpful, and thank you so much for coming in person too, Commissioner Metz. We really appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind just staying up here, we just need to make sure Mr. Deere can you share a mic over there, Mr. Deere? Does that work? Or maybe switch out with one of your colleagues? Because I wanted to go back to your earlier statement, Mr. Deere, that
And I used to talk probably weekly with these people on different projects, and we haven't really been in the loop lately, so, but I'm glad to stay here.
Great. I have a feeling there'll be some questions for you. And Mr. Deere, could you go back to where you said that you could walk through your decision options, and then after that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Tuma first for to begin with questions.
Chair Sieben, yes, commissioners. So the applicant has a mix of preferred decision options with what staff proposed is in some modifications, as well as some proposed by Commissioner Tuma. And so I'll walk through them by number and order. Decision option 1. Decision option 2, although if you are adopting exception 42, which also modifies conclusion of law 8, you may want to change to align with exception 42. Decision option 3, including those exceptions proposed by staff, except in exceptions 43 and 44, there was an inadvertent mistake in the summary of those exceptions. At the end of each one of those, the word not, N-O-T, should be struck to make it consistent with our exception. Keep going. We support TUMA new 5A. We believe that's an accurate summation of the record and the applicable law. Decision options 7B, 7C, 7K, 8B, 8E.
Sorry, 8D is in dog? Or B?
8B is in boy.
Okay. And then what was after 8B?
8E, 8F, 8J, and 9. The reason why we are not proposing TUMA new 7L and TUMA revised 8F, which is fencing stormwater ponds, is because the applicant will fence all stormwater ponds. We don't believe there's a need to go talk to the landowners about that. They will just be fenced. And then TUMA new 7M and TUMA new 8L talk about modify conditions 5.4, which is screening mitigation for adjacent residences. 5.4 talks about screening for adjacent residences. I think TUMA new 7M and 8L appear to be more expansive in talking to all non-participating landowners about screening. We don't feel that's necessary. The screening was targeted and proposed for residences, not just for agricultural land. That would be very expansive. Geronimo, the applicants rather, have already started coordination with many of those landowners and will continue to do so. And we would propose that 5.4 just stay the way it is, which is providing documentation of that coordination at the pre-construction meeting rather than every 3 months from now until construction. And that's all we have on decision options.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do you need any clarifications before we turn to Commissioner Tuma then on questions, please?
Yeah, well, at some point want to get clarification on a few of them, but let's just focus on the big picture first so that we understand kind of where things are at. And I'm going to start with Mr. Weaver. So we have, obviously, we've got the record, and I understand that where Judge Mittendorf is, and I tend not to want to disagree with Judge Mittendorf. She does usually a pretty good job. And so as I look at this, I walk into it with a little trepidation, but I want to make sure we're tracking. And so when I look at the decision options recommended by staff, which is the ALJ's recommendations, is to send this back for more analysis. And as I look at that, it would be a 4410.200 subdivision 11 analysis, okay, which is not necessarily required here. She was concerned about the uses of terms here. I thought, as Mr. Deere indicated, I think I've covered that in 5, but I just want to make sure that we're walking in it wide open. The applicant understands the decision that's to go down that direction. I'm comfortable with what I've laid out, but I want to make sure also my fellow colleagues are. So make sure we kind of walk down into this. And so my first question to you is, we could send this back to you. In 30 days, you would come back to us with an analysis that would look at kind of the past, present, and future of what the cultural and farmland impacts were in some greater detail and greater narrative in your EA. Now, I felt that information was in the record, okay, and when I look at the maps, I'm pretty confident that when our settlers started settling this property, Commissioner, back in the I would guess probably 1860s, 1870s, they were starting to show up in Nobles County. It was probably all what we would call prime farmland, but it was prairie, okay, and so long as you can drain it, that would become prime farmland at some point. And so I'm pretty confident that on the maps I can see where the Noble substation is, the electrical infrastructure, all the hog barns and all the turkey barns and all the residential residences that have been taking up this land. I see where Reading is obviously taking up, so I can see the cultural impacts here. This is an ag community that has good farmland, and so it is being sucked up for different purposes, some of it permanently, some of it temporary. I view this as a temporary idling of prime farmland, and that's the way we've designed our permits. And so my expectation is that's what the narrative would say, but I feel confident I have a record to deal with that. But we could develop a better narrative coming forward, giving me some statistics, looking at stuff. So my question to you, if we were to send it back and to do a kind of past, present, and future cultural and prime farmland narrative, is that something, if we would send it back to you, you could accomplish in 30 days?
Yes, Commissioner Tuma. We would want to maybe narrowly define the scope of that type of analysis to a geographic scope and a time scope. At what point in time are we starting? At what is the geographic scale? Is it just Nobles County? Is it something broader? What type of industry uses are we talking about? Is this land that's been lost to energy development? Essentially just defining clearly what a scope for that would be. And I also want to add, as was kind of alluded to by staff and by the applicants, that when we used the language of cumulative impacts, that was not to reference this rule. It was just to broadly reference cumulative impacts of this project in combination with other foreseeable projects happening in the area, which is usually done through a cumulative potential effects analysis. And if you look at even our major review projects, which would fall under this rule, that is the type of analysis that is done on these projects to assess cumulative impacts. And we did not realize at the time that that statutory difference was there in the language.
But we do feel that the current analysis assesses cumulative impacts. But if you wanted to come back for something that incorporates more past loss of prime farmland, for example, that is something we could do.
And
we just want to make sure the scope is clear.
And I see that in the record, I think it's page 102, 103, you have a pretty good analysis of the cumulative impacts. The unfortunate situation, we have this data center thing floating around out there that, I think gets people concerned. Obviously, you had to be on the front lines of that. We're seeing that too, Commissioner, that's floating around there. But my understanding at this stage, as far as a foreseeable thing that's in front of us, that's not in front of us for analysis. It's mostly just the fact there's other infrastructure, electric infrastructure going on in this area, and human development of houses and turkey barns or whatever else. So that's what we see, and it seems to be pretty stable process that we can identify around that substation. To me, that's the key, is that substation, and that's kind of our analysis. Looks at a 5-mile circular around that substation. Obviously, the closer to the substations, the better, because there's less human impact. If we move it up to the edge of that 5 miles, we have to obviously build probably a 345 or close to that power line from that through the community. So that's another impact that we have to analyze. So I would think that 5 miles has been the standard of what we do. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, that would be, as long as the scope, like you said, is limited to 5 miles and a time frame, I think that would be something we could do.
And I struggle with the prime farmland rule. I mean, it was designed mostly for coal plants and nuclear plants when we adopted it several decades ago. No one envisioned what you're now having to deal with, these multiple acres of panels and how we deal with it. And so I think they're a different animal than a coal plant, where you're pouring concrete over prime farmland and it's never going to be prime farmland again. The judge said it's speculative whether we can turn this back into prime farmland. It's probably a fair assessment that we are speculating, but I think it's speculation based on good past practice. Commissioner, you mentioned, the U of M is doing work around this. We've required, that they plant this in, really quality, Minnesota, friendly, pollinator type plants to regenerate that land. So I view it more as idling than lost. But you're a farmer, I'm not, okay? I had the privilege of, if you want to drive back, you could drive back through St. Peter, right on the top of the hill on 99 before you get into there. There's one I've been watching since I was a commissioner. It was started when I was a commissioner, and we had required that we put this quality land in there, and I was pleased as I was driving back from Reading when I drove around the community. I took that route, and as I drove by it, it was robust with flowering plants, such that a beekeeper had all of his hives out there to harvest honey. So there's uses for this land in the meantime, but we could do a better job. But I view it as idling the land, and I think our ag mitigation plans and our vegetation plans help cause it to be a little bit more than just speculation, that we could maybe return it back to prime farmland once we pull out the infrastructure. But I'd be curious what your thoughts are. I know this is the first time you got a big solar, but you farm. Let me know what you think.
I would agree, and I think this is a temporary 25, 30-year fix, basically, until we get to the next stage. As a farmer, though, I have a son and 3 grandsons, and we lose ground, we gain ground, but everybody's trying to find more. They're bringing, our community is actually a young, growing community, so we have young farmers coming back, looking for more land. Kind of ironic thing, though, we probably lose a similar amount of land to this over a 10-year period to conservation use. Pheasants Forever, DNR, they'll take a couple quarters out just north of here, So there's other things that are struggling on us for the farmland. So that's where I get at. It's hard to convince people the long-term goal is a short-term issue to them.
Yeah,
And-
the big difference in two with the prime farmland too, when I mentioned it was for coal and nuclear plants, there's eminent domain there. There's not eminent domain here.
No.
Obviously, these farmers that own this land are choosing to grow solar panels for a period of time. I was impressed, I always go and look at the county records to see who owns it and, are they an absent farmer or, somebody who's far away. It seems like a lot of these farmers are active farmers in the area. This is not a lot of, absentee landowners, the second cousin of, doing it. It seems like these are folks that are trying to diversify their portfolio is what I see with this project. I think that's what impressed me about it.
Any of the renewable projects to me is a diversification, whether it's for the landowner or the county. I mean, it's just, I'm seasoned enough that I've seen some really tough times in agriculture. So it's potential of that coming back. So we've got more tools in the toolbox than we had in the mid 80s, late 80s. But anytime that a person that's farming that loses a quarter this year and now has to bid against somebody else for it, it's a very competitive and kind of a cutthroat business. I'm not so sure if the landowners stay
Could be that too, yeah.
close, because I've got a very good friend in a neighboring county that he's going to move to Sioux Falls just because he can and that age, but there's a lot of pressure on the people that sell this land from the neighbors, so.
Yeah, and that's, those are decisions that are made. And that's why I think our prime farmland rule, though it's important and we try to follow it so that we do a very vigorous analysis. I was actually the early advocate that we just vary the rule for solar because I just didn't think it applied. But the commission went in another direction to require an in-depth analysis, and I think the applicant has done that. I've looked at all the mapping. I have a pretty good feel for what's on that landscape.
Yep.
Mr. Deere, I'm looking at it. I want you to, like I said, I try to lay out a course with TUMA 5A, and it seems like you agree that accomplishes what your exceptions were, and I think where I think our staff is from the environmental assessment point of view. And so I'm comfortable with it. I'm going to ask my commissioners here in a second if they're comfortable going with it, but I want you to own it, okay? That you're comfortable with it because sounds like a matter of, a couple months of, analysis and coming back here for reworking it. I know when we did line 3, it was like, a judge got all irritated because we didn't mention Duluth Harbor in the FEIS, and so we had to go back and do an analysis where we said Duluth Harbor, even though it was all in the record. Okay, there's some concern, but I want you to kind of own this. I mean, you're comfortable going forward. I know you are in a hurry and you're trying to move to construction date, early next year. But I think we could still accomplish that, but. I'm comfortable moving forward. I don't know where my friends are going to be at, but you are still confident, even hearing from Mr. Weaver, that 5A is the right course of action as opposed to going back.
Chair Stephen, Commissioner Tuma, that is correct. When you hear Mr. Weaver talk about the actual intent, it was not the intent of going under 4410-0200 subpart 11. It was the intent was more akin to 4410-0200 subpart 11A, which is the cumulative potential effects. And even in that definition in the rule, it says in analyzing contributions of past projects to cumulative potential effects, it is sufficient to consider the current aggregate effects of past actions. And that's what the EA did. It took the current conditions, which takes into account all those past actions, and it went from there, talking about potential new projects that would also be contributed. So the applicant is comfortable with TUMA new 5A.
And then, Madam Chair, I look to my colleagues. I don't want to spend the whole time because TUMA 5A, as you saw, is a little complicated. I'm already learning things that we have to adjust, so it's going to take some time to work through 5A and the rest of the decision option. I don't want to waste our time to do it, because I will not move it if any of you are uncomfortable and you want to have that additional analysis that apparently the ALJ thought was appropriate. I feel it's there. I feel confident in what I've laid out in 5A, but if any one of you are not, I'm one who wants to make sure that you are comfortable with moving forward at this stage. So I just kind of lean it to anybody who wants to speak up and say, I'm not comfortable. I will not move 5A then.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Thanks. Thank you, Commissioner Tuma, for putting together the decision option and for laying it all out. I found this to be a very helpful conversation. My question for Mr. Dewar and the company, you had said initially in your opening statements, I think that you're planning on having a GIA for, you've already got the GIA for the solar facility, and then you're looking for the GIA for the storage, right? Or some machination of that. But you're planning to have everything squared away with the GIA, but by the end of this year, 2026. And then you're planning then construction in 2027. That's what you said, I think, in your statements, right?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Sullivan, that's correct.
And then, which would mean that the facility would be energized, or the facility would be operational then end of like Q4 2028, right?
That's correct.
So if we did go back and, I mean, had a short comment period, my guess is, to fix this, it would take a couple months. Would that push that schedule back at all? I mean, would that delay getting the GIA by the end of the year? Would that delay construction? I mean, I didn't quite hear an answer to that before.
You can't see Commissioner Sullivan, but they're consulting with each other, so.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Sullivan, I'll take a stab at that. It would not impact the GIA, although whenever projects are moving forward under PPA negotiations, moving forward under financing, equipment purchases, having decisions and permit decisions is really important. And so the more we delay those decisions, the more it creates uncertainty as the project tries to come to fruition and get to construction in the spring of next year.
Okay. So it's, okay. So there could be a delay if we take the time to measure another time, or dot all the I's and cross all the T's, or maybe Commissioner Toomey, you don't want me to say that because and I think you're right, the record is pretty full. There's just a little bit of gray area here. So I don't know.
Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. So what is your current status of the GIA for the solar and the battery?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Hom, the solar GIA is executed, and the surplus interconnection request for the battery was submitted in January of 2025, and we expect signed GIA for that surplus by the end of this year.
So that is a bit different from your original application. Your application states that you are pursuing separate GIA queue to get the capacity accreditation for your battery. So is this information up to date in the application, right, and in any of this process? Because I couldn't find that information while I was doing my own review of these records.
Commissioner Hom, I would have to double check the application, take your word for it, but this is the most current information as to the interconnection requests.
Because this morning we have received the information from prior approved project, might is delaying another 2021 queue. That's why I was wondering whether you have any impact from that delay on your process.
Commissioner Hom, not that we're aware of.
So even that surplus interconnection will not have any impact from that delay?
That's our understanding. Our understanding is, in talking to Geronimo's interconnection specialists, all the major studies are complete. And we do estimate the process wrapping up by the end of this year.
Okay, thank you. And one additional question. The commissioner, I think Nobles County was struggling with a wind tax credit issue due to the congestion and curtailment in Noble substation. Do you see any improvement in your revenue side of this?
Yes, Commissioner Stephen, Commissioner Hom. Shortly after we were talking about that, and you were on board too at the Energy Board, and there's been work that's been done there, and I know our production we collect about $2.2 million a year, and that went up about 200,000 in that point in time. We were kind of in the process of redoing some towers and adding fields, but this was a complete field from one year to the next, and we saw that income go up. So, I mean, some of it could be because of 1 year's more wind or less, but most of it had to be with the interconnection being done. And I know Xcel has been doing a lot of interconnect, small projects in between in order to kind of clean that up. But I believe there were some issues at the substation with part of the generation equipment which has helped. And the more interconnection work that's done, small projects, this and that, it's getting better. And I don't want to get into the 765 line, but that's kind of the ultimate. If we're gonna collect all the renewable that's there, I mean, that's kind of our question too. If we're getting curtailed on the wind and now we're adding another 200 megawatts, is everything going to run or not? So it doesn't do us much good to, for us to say yes or approve something when it's not changing the amount that we're going to collect on it. But that's kind of what we hope the future will fix.
Yeah, thank you. That's why I think it's a battery project is essential to accompany with the solar project to manage those potential concerns. So that's why I think it's good to have both projects at the same time. And being said, if we have too much energy output around this area, potentially county may not realize full benefit of hosting it. I think host community should get the full benefit of it. Is there any plan for the company to help county or compensate in some different way than PTC if there is a curtailment situation get worse? I know that we told Xcel to improve it, so they are installing 300 megawatt battery there, and then they are going to improve the stability issue at that substation. But if you're in serve state and then that project doesn't match, potentially your project will curtail other project and county may not get the benefit of hosting it.
If I may comment a little bit on that. And that's what we look at, and I farm around 3 different projects, and you see the least efficient ones are the ones that are shut off, right? You know all that information. But so that's what you always worry about. It's the newer systems are going to be the most efficient and going to run. So I don't know, can't say it's unfair, but it's kind of unfair to the ones that were there first, and now they have to put their bid in for the energy for that day, and if it's not cheaper than the next guy, they're going to be shut off.
Yeah, I think that's why my concern that community and county is willing to host as a diversification of your income, and if you are not realizing it, I think that's my concern, because Nobles County is very generous in these terms that you are hosting this, but meantime, you should get the full benefit of it. So I was hoping that company can work with the county, if you can do it, to make sure that they can get the full benefit, because your generation, other generation may not produce energy, then the county cannot get the cumulative benefit from this hosting both. So other than that, I'm glad to hear that you are using now surplus not rather than separate interconnection, because separate interconnection is impossible at this point. Because now they are restarting 2021, that means if you start your queue this time, I don't know whether you can get it in 2030. So I'm glad that you have that solution, but also hopefully that you are fully aware that county should get a full benefit of your generation because they're hosting your generation.
Just kind of two comments on that, Commissioner Hom. I totally agree on both your items that the battery is very critical to the long term, and there's probably going to be new technology, the batteries that are going to be more than 4 hours. And because we're starting to see battery projects proposed without any new transmission. They're adding them on to both wind and solar and other places. And I've always thought, yeah, the production tax level is there, that we should get paid that whether it's running or not, because the person that hosts that facility, that their lease doesn't normally change because it's producing or not changing. But I think that would take a act of the legislature to do that. And so I'm sure you guys have looked at that, or you wouldn't be talking about it. But
yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Okay, because that congestion, a lot of time wind farm is shutting down their operation. Mm-hmm. And then potentially solar farm will shut down their operation. They generate energy, but they disconnect from the system, so you cannot get the tax credit. Mm-hmm. If they still produce it and save it in the battery, in the process, you are receiving that tax credit. Yep. That's why I said this battery is very critical for the county to make sure that you get the full benefit from it. And also, I think system-wide, we will get a full benefit of building this infrastructure. I know that a lot of people are sacrificing their community to host this infrastructure, but hosted will get a benefit from it. In the meantime, hopefully you will get a full benefit of tax credit. So I was trying to make sure that you are getting those full benefit.
Totally hear you, and thank you.
So Commissioner Tuma, I don't know if that was enough assurance, but the way I'm comfortable moving forward with 5A, Tuma knew 5A, after hearing the exchange, because I think the applicant understands, like, there's some risk, but they're comfortable with it, and so.
Yeah, risk both ways, yeah.
There's risk, yeah, both ways. So I don't know if that's helpful, but.
Yeah, it is. And I'm ready to dive into just some specifics if you guys are ready. I just wanted to make sure we got the bigger picture out of the way, and it seems like I'm comfortable where we're going. I'm going to start with labor and maybe get them a chance so they don't have to sit here. I didn't hear from Mr. Pranis if you're okay with the decision options I laid out in the permit. I did hear Mr. Durr say he's okay with essentially what is P5, or what I would call Commissioner Siebens' solution from Charlotte. And so I think the language that is in Appendix B, P5, which is in the decision option, is that kind of status quo settlement. You guys go work out the problems. And I understood that you're okay with that, and it does have all that language that you had, I think, that you were concerned about, that was missing from what the applicant filed. So if you're okay with the language in Appendix B, P5, which is included in my decision option, okay, then I think we're okay, but I didn't hear that from you, so.
But I think it was in your letter, Mr. Pranis, if I'm not mistaken, is that correct?
Yes, I tried to take the language from your letter, and that I thought I was capturing it in which would be decision options 7K and 8J. Is that right, Mr. Deere? And I thought I heard you support those two decision options.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Tuma, 7K, yes.
And 8J.
Yes.
And that's essentially the language that's in Appendix B, P5.
Correct.
Okay. And if you don't have that language?
Sorry, excuse me. Chair, Commissioner Tuma, I'm looking online at your decision options, and I do not see the appendix. So I don't know. I can't.
It's with staff briefing papers had appendix, and I think Mr.
Oh, the original with.
Yeah, so it's from staff briefing paper. I grabbed staff briefing papers appendix that they had And
Thanks. I should take a look. My impression was the staff briefing papers. Correct.
It's P5. It's P5, but it's in section 8.5 of the permit. It's just a little tricky because the
Right.
pages aren't numbered.
trying to make it simpler made it more complicated, but that's how life is. Welcome to PUC.
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, yes, that's as far as I can tell, the identical language from Lake Charlotte. That's the language that we support as well.
And that's my understanding. It was identical. I asked staff to make sure we did exactly what we did at Charlotte. My understanding is the briefing paper addressed that, and that was P5. And Mr. Raines, is that your understanding? You're comfortable with that?
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioners, that is our understanding.
Okay, so I think we settled that.
I'm sorry, there is a confusion. When I read K, however, your K, 7K, it says amend draft permit conditions as shown in the applicant's July 24th, 2026 filing, which is not the same as the language that's in the appendix.
Mr. Janusik.
Chair Sieben, Commissioners, Mr. Prentice, I think there was an error in the applicant's filing where they included the language, but it's not redlined, so it doesn't stand out. That might be part of the confusion, but in staff's interpretation, it is in fact in there. But please go ahead and double check, of course.
Is that your understanding, Mr.
And
Deere?
before we move to make a vote, maybe the order writer or someone could pull up the actual language as we're proposing it would be amended to put it on the screen. But if we're not ready for that, Ms. Kaler, we can do it later. Later? Yeah.
Mr. Deere, is that your understanding? That what Mr. Janusik says was what I understood, that your language did include it, but it wasn't very clear, is all.
That's correct. It did include it. I think the opening paragraph maybe failed to be turned red, but it is there, and it is consistent with P5.
And K.
Decision option, yes, 7K, which is
P5.
P5.
Yeah. This is like a Jenga matrix to try to track it.
Sorry about that.
No, it's not your fault.
Next, I want to cover noise. I think Commissioner mentioned that, and I have some concerns about the noise of these batteries. We're learning them and permitting them now. There's a couple residents that are close. So, Mr. Deere, we typically make sure that the noise is at the appropriate PCA levels at receptors. So I'm not clear whether this battery is going to, as you stand right next to it, exceed the PCA noise standard first. Is that your understanding?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, the achieving the noise standard would be measured at the nearest receptor, which in this case is going to be a residence.
Yeah, the Salt residence, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. And so the permit, the battery storage permit requires, section 5.5 requires pre-construction noise modeling the actual noise that would be perceived at that residence and other residences. And then it will also, 5.6 requires post-construction noise studies to verify that that is correct, that we don't have exceedance of the MPCA noise requirements.
If we do, that's going to be a permit violation. We would work with the Salt residents to figure out if we can mitigate that noise by barriers or that kind of activity. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, that is correct. It would be the applicant's job to work with that landowner to make sure that there is proper mitigation or operational adjustments.
And to help the commissioner, no different than what we do for wind.
Correct.
My understanding, so. Any still concerns? I mean, it's new to me, Commissioner Merz, but I want to make sure you're comfortable with it because I would be nervous like you are too about that if I have a constituent that's going to have a thing.
I guess I knew it, excuse me, Commissioner Seaman, Commissioner Tuma. I knew it was part of the permit, but I got to poke them a little bit. Okay. But still, it's a concern for that residence, and I'm culprit of FaceTime too, so that's how I went and found what the noise levels are. I'm not sure if that's what you see or not, but they were talking 70 to 90 decibels, and that's more than what MPCA would allow. But that's at the battery and not next to his site, so.
So we'll keep an eye on it, and I appreciate you. I'm going to do some more poking, but I think you're right to poke. So let's poke on fences a little bit. I want to understand where we go with this. And here's the way I see Mrs. Fritz's comments, okay? She's worried about her family walking out the back of her door and being able to access a pond. We don't know how deep it's going to be. I doubt it's going to be anything I can raise lake trout in. It's going to probably be a swamp, but nonetheless, I think her concerns that she laid out were very legitimate. I would have a concern about it, but I'm not her. If I were sitting there, I would not want the project fence to be expanded the way you have. And so what you presented to the public is a project fence, which is going to be hopefully 8 feet, maybe 10 feet. We don't know what the DNR is going to do here. I didn't see any deer, but I have to say I did see a lot of pheasants. Okay, so I mean, I was very impressed, and I've talked to somebody who says it's pretty significant. I saw 3 broods of pheasants driving around there in a half-hour time of driving around. So I mean, it's in full broods. I mean, it wasn't like 1 or 2. I mean, it was pretty cool. So to me, I'm more worried about the pheasants getting it out of the fence but I'll let the DNR worry about that. I wouldn't want an 8-foot fence where she's suggesting it, okay? I don't know what she's thinking or what's happening here. What you've drawn, the fences we have mean something, so you've given us some lines that we're going to permit. You can change it in the plan and profile, and we want to have those conversations. I agree with you, it should be non-participating residents, and so I think I'm okay with changing that language so that we're talking about the residents' impact. But I kind of like not having a fence around it if I were a neighboring landowner, okay? And not everybody's going to be like Miss Fritz. Miss Fritz might want a fence to protect her kids from, and her dog from getting to that water thing, and that fence could be 3 feet for that matter, because I don't think you have an obligation under the electric siting code to have an 8-foot fence around a retention pond. And so I would want to limit the amount of 8-foot fences. And so that's why I try to create a decision option that required consultation. We can talk about whether we do it at the plan and profile or have some check-ins, okay? But just first, around a level check here, I don't want a fence around all the retention ponds. You have a lot of retention ponds, which is good. There was other comments about flooding in this neighborhood, and I know there'll be a permit that has to be developed around that, PCA and down permit activities that'll probably involve Nobles County folks, soil and water. That'll be taken care of. But if I were, looking at this going, man, this is really good. You build, I think like 13, I think I counted retention ponds possibly in that area. Makes sense because it's a pretty flat area with a lot of drainage that needs to happen. So retention ponds are good, but behind an 8-foot to 10-foot fence is kind of yuck. I would rather have the ability for, me to look out and see the ducks swimming in the pond as opposed to looking at an 8-foot, 10-foot fence. And so I try to create an option where you consult with people like Miss Fritz, and if she wants to have a fence, you maybe just put a fence around her property to keep the dogs from running in there at 3.5 feet, like you would put to keep the cows out, okay? So that's what I was trying to create here. So help me out. I'm a little nervous about all of a sudden this change to say, we're gonna have 8-foot fences around everything.
Chair Sieben and Commissioner Tuma, so the applicant did make the commitment to Ms. Fritz to fence around that stormwater pond, just to start. And after that discussion, the company went back and determined that company policy is, from a liability perspective, will require them to fence in the stormwater ponds. So they are not accessible by outside.
Require an 8-foot fence though? I mean, a liability standpoint, I just want a fence to say, don't cross here, dummy, don't trespass sign to hang on it. And I think your liability is taken care of as opposed to an 8-foot fence around what I would like to see accessible to, the little ducks and the pheasants and the other and the foxes chasing the ducks and the pheasants. I mean, that's what I would want to see, but I'm struggling with this concept of an 8-foot fence around those things. I really am. And if after consultation you tell them from a liability standpoint, we got to put it there, I guess I'm okay with it, but I guess I would like a little consultation.
Good with that. Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, the applicant can further revisit this and determine what's absolutely needed from a liability perspective. Talk to the neighboring landowners, could be possible, like you. I have a stormwater pond that is not fenced, very close to my house. The sandhill cranes are in and out of there all the time. It is nice. I don't mind it at all. I've never been concerned about my kids, maybe that they come back muddy. But I will say that the applicant can and will talk to the landowners, but the way it stands right now, we do believe they will have to be fenced, just from a liability perspective. But we will explore that and talk to the neighboring landowners.
Commissioner Mertz, what are you thinking? I'm curious.
Mr. Stephen, Mr. Tuma, it's a little bit interesting that if that was a DNR land, there would not be fence around the ponds. For the same reason they want wildlife to be able to go in and out. And I can't speak to what their company liability would be, but I totally agree with you. The aesthetics of this, when you're used to cropland, wildlife, and that type thing flying in and out, and all of a sudden now it's panels, and that's where I have a hard time with not having real close setbacks. As I sit out on my deck, look over my cornfields, I can see our pasture land and deer and stuff in and out, and if that was taken away from me, I wouldn't be very happy. So that's some of the things I spoke about before with the expanding the setbacks and stuff, which they have done. The more of the things that we can avoid changing the picture of the landscape, the better.
That was my thinking, but I'm appreciative of the consultation. We'll see if we can find some language that would hopefully work. I want to revisit a couple things that you mentioned, Mr. Deere, so that when I go back work with staff, we can cover it. You did mention concerns with 3. I thought of the 2. So walk me through decision option 2, your preferred. That was the way I read. You had some problems with 43, 44, and 42. And so I have to now refresh my memory what those were. Is that what you said? And maybe I missed something. So what were your concerns when you were talking about 2?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, so I want to I had these flipped, so I apologize.
That's okay. I'm just
decision option
things all the time. So
decision option 2 contains all of the exceptions, and decision option 2, when you look at, we support all of the staff recommendations.
So what we see there printed on Tuma decision option, I thought was all the staff, but I could be wrong. I'm looking at Craig.
Yeah, they align. So.
And so the only exceptions there would be in 43 and 44, exceptions 43 and 44, as presented in the table, exception table.
Those are the recommendations from the ALJ.
Yep, that's correct. The not in each one of those, as in the criteria have not been met, it should be criteria have been met.
So I'm looking at 43. The commission should grant the summit for the site per the legal standards have been, so that should also be crossed out.
That's correct.
And then right below that, in 44, the same place, not, should be crossed out. And then, did you say the same was in 42? The record is sufficient to determine the project does not, or should be does meet?
No, I'm sorry, Commissioner Tuma, 42 is correct. The comment about 42 was as to decision option 3. Decision option 3 basically says something very similar, but E42 just has slightly different language on the same thing. So if you are adopting E42 as part of 2, we suggest that 3 be modified to be consistent with E42.
And how would I modify it to be consistent?
It would reject the ALJ's conclusion of Law 8 and conclude that the project with the permit conditions adopted herein do not present the potential for significant adverse environmental effects that are not otherwise mitigated by site permit conditions.
Do not present the potential, say that again? You're striking some of the language in there.
That is, so I think you could, and it's not needed. I'm sorry. Let me just match these up. So you could say, in decision option 3, reject the ALJ's conclusion of Law 8 and conclude that the project with the site permit conditions adopted herein does not present the potential for significant adverse effects, period. Or you could keep the language the way it is, and I think that would also be suitable.
Our staff thought that that decision option.
Oops, you turned off.
Excuse me, our staff thought that the language that's contained in decision option 3 now, Mr. Deere, is aligned more with the statutory language. But you're saying that if we shorten it up, it might be more consistent with what we're doing in other parts of the permit where we're modifying the ALJ's recommendations? I'm just trying to
Chair
understand.
Sieben, that's correct.
Yeah.
I think I trust staff's interpretation and their guidance here. And if you wanted to keep 3 the way it is, I think it would also be consistent with E42 and would be more robust. So it completely fine if you keep decision option 3 the way staff has it drafted.
We could end with, to be consistent with the modifications to in E42 or whatever, something like that too. I mean, but I think they are consistent.
They are consistent.
So I think we've had enough discussion that I think our order writer knows that now. We're all convinced they're consistent. Right, Ms. Gaylord? I think so, yes. All right. And then I want to talk about next decommissioning if we could. So you didn't say whether you support TUMA New 10, and that is just to modify the decommissioning language. I'll just tell you what I attempted to do with that. I believe the way the permit is drafted, and you'll see that when I cite my examples of why I made these changes at the beginning, that this is consistent with what should happen already. In other words, the permit has enough ties in there under the ag language, the permit itself, the vegetation management plans, all of that seem to be that TUMA New 10, which modifies the decommissioning and restoration language, is that you must restore the land to its past usage, and that the money that may be in a decommissioning fund could be used to accomplish that if you guys are poof and gone and no more. This is 30 years. We're all going to be gone. It's not us going to be doing this. It's going to be somebody else, okay? You might be young enough to not be retired by then. I will be long gone. So I'll be under some sod someplace. So I want to make sure that when we hand this off, everybody understands that if there's money in a decommissioning fund and you guys go bankrupt, money could be used by Nobles County and us to work with landowners to restore that land to its prime farmland if they want to. And so that's what I was just trying to Again, I think Commissioner Sullivan used it. I'll get it wrong. It's just, I'm going to dot my T's and cross my I's. That's me. But I'm just trying to make sure it's very clear that, because there was a lot of concern about, we're losing the prime farmland, and I view this as we are just temporarily setting it aside to let these farmers farm solar panels there for a while. So, Mr. Deere, that's what I was trying to accomplish. Are you okay with 10?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, the applicants are fine with Tuma new 10.
Okay.
Can I jump in on a?
Can I, question on that?
Sure.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Sieben, Commissioner
yeah.
Tuma. This is heavily ag drain ground with county tile, private tile, and I'm not sure we haven't worked out the total plan with our drainage coordinator yet, but undoubtedly there's going to be some tile that are going to be disconnected, maybe destroyed. If we're going to restore this back to present, I want to make sure that that language is also included as part of that the original tile plans are put back to where they were.
I believe it will be.
Okay.
And I believe that's what you should be sure in the downstream permits that we're dealing with. That's my understanding, but I'll let Mr. Deere respond.
Commissioner Tuma, just to jump in here, but if the language isn't in front of you, Commissioner Metz, in 9.2, Commissioner Tuma's adding in new language that would say, the permittee shall restore and reclaim the site to pre-project conditions to allow for the property to return to its agricultural production. So that should help accomplish your goal there too.
It still requires a permit, your folks developing your permit with them on the drainage, but that's the goal in the end.
And it says prime farmland just below, a line below that too now.
Yep, we have a long ways to go yet on that whole thing, so I'm sure that'll be put into our plan, so, and he just showed me that language. So it's a little bit gray whether or not it says,
Actual
it's
tile.
restored to what it was in 1860 character or 2050 character, so there's a whole difference, so.
It should be farmed, it should be prime farmland, and, that's what it is now, and that's what I anticipated. And a lot of it's up to that landowner too, who owns it, what they want to do with it. If they don't want to put it back in prime farmland, they want to keep it in some sort of mitigation status of the natural pollinator-friendly vegetation we planted there, they have a right to do that too. So that's.
And can I add on that?
Sure.
Or a question? Mr. Deere, in your vegetation management plan, you're going to include a description of the grazing management strategies in case that grazing is used as a long-term management strategy in areas of the project occupied by the solar array and surrounding arrays. So to Commissioner Metz's opening comments about how he would potentially like to see sheep grazing on the actual the land where the solar array is that a option that Geronimo is pursuing with the participating landowners now, so that there's not only pollinator seed mix that will be laid, but we have seen success with another Xcel project at Sherco Solar where they're using sheep as a vegetation management tool, and it's actually really cool to see. Like, it's cheaper and it's working out well for that site. And so can you just talk about that potential, please, a little bit more, and what the applicant is working on for grazing management strategies?
Chair Sieben, Commissioners, and I'll ask Ms. Miller to jump in if I get any of this wrong, but the company as a whole is pursuing agrivoltaic options, and some of that is our sheep grazing at their projects to manage vegetation. It's my recollection that some of the landowners adjacent to here do have sheep, and there have been some preliminary conversations. Whether or not that will actually work is to be determined, but it is an option that is being pursued in a management strategy for their solar facilities generally. Anything else, Dan?
And can you state your name for the record?
Yes, Amber Miller,
Oh, sorry, that's probably our microphone's, not you.
Amber Miller, Geronimo Power, Permitting Director.
I don't think it's working. Can you use Mr. Deere's microphone? Apologies.
Amber Miller, Geronimo Power, Permitting Director.
And so can you just confirm that what Mr. Deere said is correct and give a little more flavor to like
Sure.
if the applicant or if the landowners want that to happen,
Yeah.
is the company committed to doing that?
So typically when we have done pilot projects on other solar projects.
In Minnesota?
Not in Minnesota, in Illinois. There's typically a cost effectiveness if the herd is close, if they can, be located on the site, if there's someone who's going to maintain the sheep. Typically, that would be done about 3 years after COD because we need the native vegetation to establish. But we have talked to our operations folks, and they are looking at all of our upcoming projects in Minnesota and other areas. They are looking at the possibility of, whether or not we can do sheep on the project, just because vegetation maintenance is one of our highest costs for our operating projects.
Okay, and Commissioner Metz, anything you want to add? It sounds like it could happen, it could be expensive, and it could not happen.
I'm just
thing you
glad
wanted
that,
to add?
Commissioner Sieben, that they're looking at the possibility of it. I hate sheep, so I'd put cattle in there. Sorry.
Hate sheep. Like the
Child-
Volvo at
childhood
least,
experience.
or what part
But
of sheep don't you like?
University of Minnesota Morris has their dairy herd under it, and if you're going to go to that, you have to put the panels on taller stilts, so.
Yeah, we saw that.
Sheep is definitely the thing to put in there, so, but strike that from the record, please.
All the sheep farmers will be voting against you next time.
There you go. There aren't any.
We didn't hear that. Well, and I think that's, I'm happy to hear that, because if you do have a farmer that would be a neighboring farmer or something, that's something you would be willing to work with if they want to, run sheep, and for whatever reason. I understand our wool market is not that great here in Minnesota, but, they're still growing, and mutton is still good. A lot of people like it. I don't. I agree with you on that. But I'm happy that you're willing and open to consider that, and I hope that maybe that something like that would develop down there. Madam Chair, I want to walk through and make sure I understand where we're at with 7 and 8 so that we can get the details down, and I think then we can take a short break so I can figure out what we're doing. Let's start with 7, Mr. Deere. I had, working off of the decision options at page 27 and my decision options, I have what I heard from you, that you support 7, 7B, 7C, 7K, not Tuma New 7L, but you were okay with Tuma New 7M. Is that my understanding of your position on the 7s?
Chair Seaman, Commissioner Tuma, that's correct, except 7M, we talked about non-participating neighboring residences.
Neighboring
Landowners with residences,
residents
perhaps.
as opposed to landowners.
Yeah.
Are we gonna, Commissioner Tuma, did you want to ask the DNR what they thought about your fencing requirements for any of these, or no?
Not that I can think of. We pretty much know what their position is. I'm trying to work with the landowners next to the retaining ponds, but if the DNR is here and has an opinion on fencing retention ponds, I would be happy to hear what their concern would be. But he's reluctantly getting up slowly. Because I'm not thinking of changing the requirement for the facility. That's a DNR. I'm just looking at maybe lower fences around non-electrified equipment. So,
Sir, welcome. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Chair Sieben and Commissioners. Martin Donovan on behalf of the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. no concerns with your proposed modification for the retention pond. And support the permit condition as is. Looking forward to coordinating with the permittee on the.
But as far as retention ponds, we're having this debate, about putting the 7-8 foot fence or not 8 to 9 foot fence or 10-foot fence around the retention ponds. And I'm suggesting talk to the landowners and don't put them around the retention ponds unless they want to protect their animals and kids from getting in it. Are you okay with a lower fence around retention ponds that are not connected to the facility?
Yeah, Chair Sieben and Commissioner Tuma, correct. We have no concerns regarding the fence surrounding the retention pond. We don't want to interfere with conversations between a landowner and the permittee.
Okay. And then, Mr. Deere, 11I, that is non-participating landowners fencing. Again, that if we were to do a 7L, it would be residents. And your other concern, you don't have no problem with consulting the residents, but you were concerned about the check-in that I was requiring every 3 months. Is that kind of where we're at?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, that's correct.
And then I'm now to 8, okay. You suggested, I believe, and my notes are really scribbly, so I'm going to have I have 8, B, E, F, J, and Tuma 8L with residents. But I want to make sure I hear from you what you were proposing, because it's not looking good on my notes here.
That's correct. Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, that's correct. 8B is in boy. 8E. 8F. And again, this would go back to the same as 7L. It's similar language, similar concept. 8J. And then 8L would be the same as 7M.
And we already talked about 10. So I think.
Except, didn't you also say, Mr. Deere, you didn't want coordination every 3 months in 8L? Or is that the same? The time frame is the same as in 7M?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, I believe we landed on, and I think you understood our preference, which is to just do one compliance filing before the pre-construction meeting rather than every 3 months for both the fence as well as the visual screening.
And maybe I'm just not understanding, but the language in around fencing the stormwaters is that considered within the project area? So you'll just like extend your project area around the stormwater basins, or will there be a separate fence around the stormwater basins?
Chair Sieben, the intention, at least from the company, is to just include the stormwater pond within the project fence, the overall solar array fence, so that when they do stormwater pond maintenance, they don't have to exit the fence, enter another fenced area. They would just be able to access from inside the facility.
Okay, that's where you were saying, having a little disagreement that I'm tracking. So you're fine with what they're suggesting, or you're not? You want to talk to staff and?
I will talk to staff, but I can tell you where I'm kind of at is that I thought I heard a commitment from them to go back and look at their liability concerns and still talk with the neighbors. And to see if they have to have an 8 to 10-foot fence around stormwater retention ponds. And if we can eliminate that from a liability and from a neighbor concern, I hope that they would be willing to do that. That's what I heard they're willing to do or committed to, but I could be wrong.
That is correct.
So the conversation's still to be had.
Commissioner Partridge.
Sorry, I'm confused. So if the main fence, if the stormwater basins are within the main project fence, then the fence can't be lowered around that area, right? Okay, so you're asking him to consider not fencing it within the main. I see. Okay, I understand.
There are several retention ponds that are like right on the edge of the facility, and they happen to be right next to people's properties. There's actually
Okay.
2 that I saw that, so I know what Miss Fritz wants. She wanted it fenced in, and,
I see.
but I don't know what that other neighbor wanted. You know, they could say, I want to see the little ducklings,
Okay,
you know, so.
got it. I get it now.
And the company's saying they're going to try to not fence in the ducklings.
Right.
If their liability, which I thought Mr. Deere said, their liability insurance or whatever requires them to fence in the ducklings.
And I question that. So, so I want them to go back and look carefully at. I have a hard time envisioning that some liability insurance would require an 8 to 10 foot fence to protect from kids getting in. I think a 3-foot fence and a no trespass sign is more than enough to protect you from liability, but I could be wrong. But again, I'm just being the old country
I
attorney.
just think we should maybe direct them to do what you want, I guess is what I'm saying.
I
a little
think we're
more than,
there. I
like,
think we're
keep
going to
it
get some
open.
language to direct them to go and have, reconsider and consult. So I don't know if you want to take a lunch break or if I don't know how long you're planning on going. I probably would need at least 15 minutes, but it's up to you how you want to manage it.
Well, commissioners, do you want to take a 15-minute break or take a 45-minute lunch break? No one cares?
No one cares, I guess.
Why don't we
This is
take
why
a
they pay you the big
15
bucks, Madam Chair.
Why don't we take a 15-minute break and then hopefully we can wrap this up and then move on to the third item. So we'll be in recess until 5 to noon. Commission stands in recess.
Hey, quick job.
The commission will come back from it. Oh, sorry, just a sec. We're actually still in recess. We're going to wait for our legal counsel unless we should.
I think it'd be a good idea. 'Cause
Yeah.
She's the second set of eyes, so.
So we'll stay in recess for a couple minutes. You can turn off the camera. Thank you.
You can leave it on Joe, but.
The commission will come back from its recess. And Commissioner Tuma.
Yes, and I think Ms. Kahlert is working to get the motion on the screen. We determined that decision option number 9 is the most important of all the decision options. That's the one where we delegate authority to the executive secretary to clean up our mess. So, but I think we're going to get there. So when we get it up, we will walk through it carefully and slowly. So starting on the next page.
So Commissioner Tuma, you're working off of your decision options?
I was going to say that
Just
it seems simplest to work off of my decision options because it has a few things that we're modifying. So if you have that, that's where to start from. So I would move decision option 1, which is adopt the LJ report to the extent it's consistent with our decision. Then I would move decision option 2, but modify E43 and E44 to remove the word not, as recommended by the applicant. I would move decision option 3 as is. We discussed this and we agree with Mr. Deere that it is more robust but meant to be the same, and I think that's pretty clear in the record. Then I would move 5 and Tuma new 5A. And then all of that. And then going to 7, I would move 7, 7B, 7C, 7K. This is the labor language. Now it gets a little bit more complicated. So I would move modified 7 Tuma new 7L, removing the word landowner and replacing it with residence, and then delete the last sentence, meaning that they must make the compliance now normally as you do with plan and profile. And then we make that same modification to 7M. So vegetation and fencing, we require them to work with the landowners to determine what makes sense for the screening and fencing. And staff was fine. I talked to Craig about this, is that, he has a chance to communicate with you and ask how things are going, and I'm sure will be upfront with him when he asks you in the interim, so we didn't feel like we needed to do a specific compliance filing. And I appreciate the fact that you're already working with Ms. Fritz on how to solve that. 8 would be 8B. Okay, this is the veg language. That means veg for life, I call it. So as opposed to a limited amount of time. And this is consistent with staff recommendations. And the applicant agreed to it, so.
So just to be clear, you're picking up the 8 as in the, back to the decision.
Correct.
This regular decision options, not
It was
yours.
missed. I intended to have it, we just missed it.
But it's as 8B is.
Yep.
Okay.
And then a little bit from way my decision options where we got F and E transposed. So E is first, and that is already in my decision options and already in the staff's decision options. This is the community impact language that the applicant has agreed to, so 8E. Then 8F as modified, again, this is the stormwater retention ponds, again, limiting it to residences and not having the compliance filings in between. And
Wait,
then,
to go back to 8E, sorry.
yep,
That's the way staff wanted it, where it's for the duration of the project, not just the 20 years or whatever?
This is
Yes,
the- yes.
staff is nodding. Okay, great.
and then 8J, which is again the labor language. And then 8L, modified, again, removing landowners and replacing with residents and removing the last part of the sentence on compliance. Then again, the most important section of all of this, 9, which gives the executive secretary authority to correct errors, and then TUMA new 10 on the decommissioning and restoration plan, just kind of cleaning up and nip and tucking that language.
So Commissioner Tuma, thank you for all your work on this. Just to understand the part about, if you can scroll up a little bit, please, Ms. Kaler, the idea for the visual screening plan is that the permittee will have to work with landowners, even if they're non-participating residences, to listen to what the neighbors are requesting around tree planting. That's your understanding? Yep. And I Commissioner Metz, I assume that that's what you would prefer to, based on your earlier comments.
Yes, Commissioner Sieben. Quite a few of these landowners that are affected by the view are not participating. So, I mean, I was kind of wondering about that language before, but I'm glad to see that that's included that way. So it should cover that.
And Mr. Deere, because it's new, are you opposed to this, or you're going to be okay with that new TUMA language, I assume?
Chair Seaman, the applicants are comfortable with that new TUMA language.
Great. The requirement for the sheep grazing, I think for Commissioner Tuma, I was thinking like it's probably okay the way it is, but it could have been a little stronger, like encouraging the applicant to do that and not just hope it might work. But did you think through that on your?
I didn't do anything. We certainly could. I mean, that's what the vegetation management and ag plans kind of address. But we could be more specific and say in 3 years, we want them to provide a compliance filing, giving us an analysis of whether grazing is something that could be done on the property, because they said they would like 3 years to do that. I would be comfortable with that. I didn't put anything in, but
I'm kind of
just missing that.
Making this up on the fly because I didn't work on it on the break. So I don't know if that, Mr. Deere, if you have suggested language like to come back to in 3 years to provide a report on your description of grazing management strategies, so that at least there can continue to be from the commission stronger direction, that we don't just want you to consider it in other places around the country, but we really want you to work with the landowners to do it if it's a viable option. Does that seem to be language you could work with, or do you think it's fine the way it is?
Chair Sieben, if I might direct you to permit condition in the solar site permit 4.3.17, which is the vegetation management plan provision.
4.3.17.
That's correct.
I thought that was the application of pesticides. Or am I looking at I'm looking at the best, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay, hold on.
Yeah. Here it is, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, sorry, I think.
That's okay. It's tough when you have two permits.
if you look to, the VMP must include the following. So we talk about A, B, C, and then D talks about a description of the management tools used to maintain vegetation, which includes a list: mowing, spot spraying, hand removal, fire, grazing, etc., including the timing and frequency of maintenance activities. So there is some direction there to include that. We could do at the end of that condition, after best management practices should be followed concerning seed mixes, we could include just a sentence that applicant shall file a compliance filing 3 years after commercial operation, detailing its efforts to utilize grazing as a management measure.
Yeah,
That sounds good.
that sounds
Or
good.
it sounds better. Commissioner Metz, do you have any thoughts on this?
You're going to have an issue with, depending on what grass mix you use, if you're going to go with a pollinator method, it's going to be expensive, and you don't want the little animals coming in and chewing that off later. So I'm not sure if you want to leave that open or give them the option of what they think they're going to do down the road. But, and it will take 3 years to establish it. I've just seen that in DNR practices to get if you're going with pollinators, to get the wildflowers to take over, it will take that long.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you want.
I think the idea is that we want them to come back and give a status update on the grazing practices and the vegetation management plan with like added push that you really need to work on it for the 3-year out assumption that there may be participating landowners who want to pursue that option or pursue sheep grazing as a form of vegetation management. So just reporting it on 3 years will probably cover it.
And I would agree with that, Chair Sieben.
Mr. Deere, does that work?
That works. Just as from my understanding, Commissioner Metz is correct in that there will be a different seed mix for grazing as opposed to non-grazing, just in a preference on what they eat. So at least the seed mixes will probably, that are chosen and included in the initial VMP, will probably have to keep the option open by providing more of a grazing mix than
Or
just
an early
a
conversation with some of the landowners too. If you have some landowners that want to consider it, you would do it in that parcel. If other landowners are not wanting to consider it, you would just say, let's just go with the pollinator friendly. That's a conversation I would assume you would have.
And it's going to
That's
go
correct.
through the vegetation management working group too.
Right.
So
And if I may, Chair Sieben, I don't know if you want, I don't know what the footprint is, but still 1,800 acres, but that's probably excessive for what pollinators would be. I mean, there's spots where you could establish pollinators and have other areas that under the panels that are subject to grazing. Those type of forages, if they're not grazed, they'll have to be mowed, but either one or the other. So you don't kind of tie their hands that they put a pollinator mix under the whole thing, because
Yeah, we're not trying to tie hands. We're trying to create flexibility as much as possible here.
if you could
because-
just leave that in the process.
And I think the idea is we don't want the applicants to we want them to listen to the landowners too, and developing their grazing techniques and vegetation management plan. And for the purposes that you stated, that there may be some farmers who want to continue to explore agrovoltaics, and that we want to enable that to happen and not have the applicant come back and say, no, we can't do it because of whatever reason. So,
Commission just loves pollinator-friendly things, and they must do
I mean,
that, yeah.
we do love flowers here, but
We do love flowers.
Yeah.
Proves that every week.
Having them come back in 3 years is key, just to make sure that they've done what they've done. It'll satisfy whatever decisions you make down, in the future. This is not the last one. So I'm sure you're learning as you issue permits, what's the correct thing to do, and go from there.
Yeah, Geronimo's been doing this for a while. They were actually one of the first to do some more industrial scale with when we did that, and there were some learnings. There was a lot of mistakes made. There was tiles that were broken and they were destroying the facility itself, and so, and we've gone back and looked at some of their sites, and they're improved. They've improved their performance quite a bit over the years. So I'm confident that they will continue to do that and learn.
We'll just have our order writer incorporate that 3-year reporting language into the permit where it should go, if that works for you, Commissioner Tuma.
Yes.
I think the
I
intention's
include in my
clear.
motion the 3-year compliance language suggested by Commissioner Sieben
Thank you.
for.
Mr. Deere.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. If we could make that compliance filing 3 years after commercial operation, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I intended.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the overall motion, commissioners? Commissioner Sullivan, anything?
I'm good. Thank you.
Is the motion clear to our staff and the parties? Yes. So we'll vote on Commissioner Tuma's overall motion. Commissioner Partridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Hom,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuma,
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yes.
I also vote yes. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate your extensive work on this.
Thank you.
And thanks, Gene, for coming up. We appreciate
Yes,
it.
and
Thanks,
thank you, Commissioner.
For inviting me. It's been a pleasure to be part of this and
Yep.
see what happens when I get home. But,
Yep.
okay,
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
keep doing the good work.
You do the hard work, yeah. So we'll give folks a chance to come forward for item 3, and then we'll take a break, or we'll adjourn after we finish item 3, or in the middle of it if necessary.
Safe travels.
We're just waiting, folks, for a few minutes for Commissioner Sullivan had to restart on his computer, so it might be a minute until we're ready to go.
That's classic our computer systems.
The scheduled restart always happens at the, yeah. Okay, before we begin item 3, I'll just interject that again, like the previous docket, there was a little bit of a glitch with some of our filing on e-dockets, and some public comments were submitted to commissioners that reflect comments that were made into the record, but we have reviewed those filed comments from the public. So when you're ready, Ms. Maxim, please introduce agenda item number 3.
Good afternoon, Chair Sieben and Commissioners. Item number 3 is for docket number E002/TL-26-135 in the matter of the application of Xcel Energy and Echo Zone LLC for a route permit for the North Rochester to Skyway high voltage transmission line project in Goodhue County, Minnesota. The questions before the Commission are: should the Commission require an addendum to the environmental assessment for the project? If an addendum is required, should the Commission authorize the Executive Secretary to approve the scope of an EA addendum? And if an addendum is required, should the Commission extend the 6-month statutory deadline for the Commission to make a final decision not to exceed 9 months? Should the Commission issue the draft route permit prepared by Energy Infrastructure Permitting staff, including the proposed special permit conditions? And finally, should the Commission request that an administrative law judge from the Court of Administrative Hearings conduct public hearings for the project and prepare a summary of public testimony as expeditiously as possible? I have no further remarks, but I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll first turn to Commissioner questions and or comments, and Commissioner Partridge.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. I just wanted to start by addressing some of the public comments that we received, including some that came in very recently. Several of the comments from the public mention trade secret portions of filings within this docket. And I recognize there's a lot of sensitivity around trade secret information, given the use of non-disclosure agreements broadly between tech firms and other entities. I wanted to make clear that, first of all, the Commission does not enter into any NDAs. We are not subject to NDAs, and so I wanted to make that clear. Second, I wanted to also address what trade secret information we have within the docket and why that's trade secret. So specifically, one of the comments, and it was a thoughtful and robust comment from Ms. Dirksen, but it references specific pages that are labeled trade secret. Some of those pages are actually labeled trade secret because they are maps and information about culturally sensitive archaeological sites, including burial grounds. And those are trade secret so that people do not disturb those sacred places. There are places in the record where we have trade secret information because there's critical infrastructure that we need to protect to ensure that people continue to have reliable energy and protect the public from anyone tampering or vandalizing critical infrastructure. And then finally, there are places within the record and within many of our dockets where we protect trade secret information related to competitive information for commercial operation, which includes load, so electric load. We do that for large industrial customers, manufacturing plants, taconite customers, because that is critical to the competitiveness of their business. These are common practices that we have been using for decades upon decades. There is nothing in this record, as I have reviewed very carefully, that relates to any conversations between Xcel Energy, the utility and applicant here, and the data center owner. This record is specifically about a transmission line that would serve a data center. It is not about any kind of, backroom deal making about the data center itself that has been brought up many times in public comments. So I did want to address that. I know that there's a lot of sensitivity and distrust among the public related to data centers, and I just wanted to speak to that and assure the public that this record does protect sensitive information, as we always do, and we are not hiding any kind of information here, and the Commission is not privy to any information that is protected by an NDA. So that's all I wanted to address.
Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. Also, I'd like to address this issue a bit. I don't know whether everybody's following this issue, but there are multiple dockets going on around this area. Also, there is a data center related Xcel Energy tariff and then energy service agreements. So I understand public will have a difficulty following everything, but we have to do that in this way because that's how law is telling us what to do. I think it's not our choice, it's by the law. Being said, our utility has a designated exclusive service area. So Xcel Energy has a certain area. They are the only utility serving customer in that area. When they are assigned to this exclusive service area, they also got the burden or obligation to serve anybody showing up as a customer. They cannot discriminate customer based on their business model. They cannot discriminate anybody. If anybody shows up and asking service, they have to provide that service. So this specific docket is about serving that potential load if local government approve that project. We are not here to approve or disapprove or taking a side of that project. That is up to the local government. Here, we are trying to make sure that Xcel Energy is responding to the law, that their obligation to serve that customer, and they are planning to serve that customer in case that customer becomes real. So that's one item I want to mention. The second item is also, I understand that MISO Tranche 2.1 project is going through this area. So there is a lot of discussion about whether that lines up for this data center. If you carefully review MISO documents, when MISO does planning for Tranche 2.1, they have to update load growth assumption. That load growth assumption began in summer of 2022. ChatGPT announced a data center in November 2022. And MISO complete this assumption update by summer of the 2023, and they planned this transmission line project. So data center fringe is not part of this assumption on the MISO Tranche 2.1. So hopefully public can understand that 765 lines and then 345 line around these area is planned as it is because we have concern with reliability due to the generation retirements and replacement of that. And also the weather pattern is changing. Extreme weather deserve better transmission line system, along with our transmission line system was built 40 to 50 years ago, and we need to replace them. Otherwise, we can have a reliability problem. So hopefully we can address that issue once again in that docket, but I want to make sure that public can check my statement at the MISO website, and you can be informed about those details, and then we can discuss that in the other dockets. But today we are going to focus on whether we should proceed with the process to find better routes for this project, or if there is an environmental concern, how we address that environmental concern with the mitigation process. So this is once again not final process of this. This is the middle step. So we are going to decide whether applicant provide environmental assessment is good enough, whether we need addendum to it, and then how we're going to do a public process beyond this today. And then I have some question, unless other commission has a statement to make. Thank you. And also, we discussed this issue briefly, but when we are discussing this data center related expense, so this project will be solely borne by data center customer. Under the MISO, the state-approved Xcel Energy tariff, the data center has to pay upfront. Not even they can make an installment plan. This is upfront. 100% should be paid for by data center customer if this project becoming real. Not only we establish that tariff, but also our commission staff, who is specialized in following and monitoring federal issue, and we have 3 staff doing it. They are sitting behind that audience seat today, and they are watching MISO process, making sure that MISO process information utilities are providing is consistent with what they are claiming here. And also they are making sure that there is no potential unintended cost shift. So if you want to know more about those information, those staff can help you with, or you can directly go to MISO and you can find the price of this project at planning level. So planning level price may be different from engineering level cost estimate, so it can change anytime. However, you can have a good ballpark of the price of this project. Being said, and Xcel had an application state that you are preparing the Rochester substation for additional 10 termination point for the future 765 lines and others. What is your plan to making sure that you are separating that additional cost, or will that cost will be borne by this project so other ratepayers are not going to pay for that portion of the cost?
And Ms. Herring, good morning, please, or good afternoon, please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Chair Sieben, Commissioner Hom. Valerie Herring from the Taft Law Firm, appearing on behalf of Xcel Energy. I'm not an expert in 100% on that issue, but my understanding is that we would use separate cost tracking mechanisms to make sure that the costs for the 765s and this project are separated out. When we talk about the future build out for the North Rochester substation, we also want to make sure that when we are talking about it, it's able to accommodate that future expansion that we know is going to be coming its way. So that's why we talk about the future expansion and the future plan for that entire substation.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand there is a potential economies of scale. If you do the preparing the site for the future expansion, you can save money for the ratepayers. So you save money there doesn't mean that Xcel is making profit. If you save money in that process, all those money goes to the ratepayers because eventually ratepayer has to pay for it, right?
Commissioner Hahn, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. But also I want to make sure that public only tracking this docket, not other docket, to know that we are making sure that there is no cost shift. Do you have any plan, or can you provide more record into this project, making sure that you are properly tracking those information?
Commissioner Hahn, we can provide additional information in this docket about how the project costs for this project and other projects are being tracked.
Yeah, I think that's the great starting point. Tell ratepayers and public that not only we are setting the right rule, but also we are effectuating that right rule to making sure that the ratepayers are not harmed by this data center cost shifting.
Commissioner Hahn, we share that concern and we can provide additional information as needed.
Okay, thank you.
Or perhaps do a cross-filing from another filing in another docket that's related to that issue, so that there doesn't necessarily have to be maybe it needs to be new information, but if the information is already in another docket, in another filing, notify us of that, please.
Chair Sieben, we can certainly take a look at that. I think you're referencing the electric service agreement docket, yes.
Right.
Thank you. And also, I think it is about new statute 216I. Under the 216I, applicant under certain condition has a choice. You can choose a standard process and other process. In this case, Xcel Energy choose standard process, right?
Commissioner Hom, that's correct. We chose to permit this project under the standard review process.
So it is not Commission's choice under the law, it's applicant's choice.
Commissioner Hom, since the project qualifies under the standard review process, that's the process that we selected and are going forward with.
Thank you. So under that statute, there is a discussion about what should be in the EA, environmental assessment, related to it. Who is required to prepare that environmental assessment?
Commissioner Hom, under the standard review process, the applicant prepares the EA and submits it as part of their route permit application.
Okay. So under that same statute, Commission can add something if we see some deficiency in your EA. However, we are not allowed to consider above and beyond this specific project.
Commissioner Hom, that's correct. The statute outlines what needs to be included in the EA itself and also what needs to be included in a potential EA addendum.
So once again, it is not Commission's choice, but we have to follow the law, and then we have a very limited ability to deviate from that law.
Commissioner Hom, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Tuma.
Yeah, I just want to look at the draft route permit, that we're approving for the beginning of drafting. And I think that's what's important, Ms. Herring, is this is just the first draft that everybody can work from. But I think I want to make it very clear, one of the critical discussion points that I think will be had through the process will be around 6.1, which is the data center approvals. And so this is a special condition our staff put in to this so that it's just obvious that we're going to have to address it. And it's very clear that the permittees, you cannot, if you get a permit, you're an applicant right now, but if you do get a permit, you will not be allowed to begin any construction at the substation, on power lines, anywhere on any property whatsoever for the transmission facility until all local, state, and federal approvals are approvals necessary to build the data center are obtained. And at the pre-construction meeting, you are going to have to, 14 days prior to that, provide all proof to the commission that you have done that. That's your understanding?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, that's correct. And I'll just note that we may have some minor edits to that condition, just to make clear that, as you know, the data center is moving forward in phases. So to make sure that we're talking about the initial phase of that data center has its required approvals, and then obviously we'd move forward with construction.
That's stuff that you'll be discussing in the process through the public hearings, letting people know what you suggest is a changing. They will know what that language is long before it even gets back for us for final consideration, right?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, that's correct. We will publicly file either a letter or testimony describing any potential changes that we have to this draft route permit that's before you today.
And I understand that there's some sort of moratorium. I'm not familiar with it. It's not my problem on the data center, but obviously there are some challenges that are happening in the permitting locally. And, probably maybe a question, for Google, but I just make it very clear, okay, as you're making this application, you're staging things, okay, you have multiple applications to do. It's not uncommon that we work on one permit while you're working on other permits, okay? You understand that. This is nothing new for us, right?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, that's exactly right. And as folks know, we are moving forward with this route permit because there's a lot of downstream permits that are required for this transmission project after this route permit is issued. I think the MnDOT comments filed in this record note that they're not going to move forward with any permits until we get a route permit. So that's why we need to stage this and make sure that we're able to get this route permit moving forward, regardless of what's happening with that litigation.
And that's going to be a big deal because you are crossing a major highway in this situation, right?
Commissioner Tuma, that's correct. We're crossing U.S. Highway 52.
And it's very clear you got to pay for this, okay? We're going to do some work, and it may just go poof. We've seen several permits that we've done a lot of work on, and they just don't happen, okay? And we require you to reimburse us for the costs of doing that. This is not going to fall on any additional ratepayers or taxpayers or anybody. This is through our normal permitting process. You understood that you're taking a risk by going forward with this permitting process, and we may assess you for all the time that our good staff puts into this in doing reviews of the EA and preparing for public meetings, all of that. That's going to be a risk that you take, but it's a risk that you have taken multiple times. It's just how the process works, right?
Commissioner Tuma, that's correct. And just to clarify, Google will be paying for the entire cost of construction of this project, including the permitting.
That's what I wanted to hear. That would have been the next question. So you're ahead of me again. That's a good attorney at work. So, Madam Chair, that's all the questions I have.
Commissioner Partridge.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. I think the only thing I was going to note is also 6.1. I think for the public to know that there will, this permit, we move forward with this permit, but everything is contingent on the other permits coming through. There won't be construction happening as long as this litigation has a temporary restraining order on moving forward with construction. As I understand it, there are a couple different pieces of litigation around this data center. I am just going to throw out for consideration as you do move forward to talk through the draft permit and refine the requirements of the draft permit, that you consider whether it would be helpful to provide some sort of status updates to the commission on the litigation and in letting us know where it stands. I think having the documentation of all the permits filed ahead of construction is certainly necessary, but it may also be helpful for the commission to understand where the litigation stands up to that point as well, and any additional litigation that may come into play between now and then that affects whether this project moves forward.
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Partridge, we can certainly provide those updates.
That'd be great.
Are there any other updates that the applicant wants to make to the overall information that is provided in our briefing papers or in the overall docket?
Chair Sieben, I don't think there's any additional updates. As commissioners have noted, this litigation regarding the data center is ongoing, and there's no updates on that front.
Okay. Other questions, commissioners, or are we ready for a motion?
Yes, if there is no other question, I can make a motion.
Commissioner Hom.
I'll follow the staff's suggestion, and I'll make a motion to move decision option 3, 6, 8, and 10.
Is there any discussion from commissioners on his motion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Commissioner Partridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Hom?
Yes.
Commissioner Tuma?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
I also vote yes. The motion passes 5-0. Great. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. There's no other business before the commission, so we are adjourned.